Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the LocationIQ API. And I'm going to be building this page right here where I can put in a keyword or latitude and longitude. I can do geocoding search, a forward geocoding search, or a reverse geocoding search. So basically this means taking a name like Vancouver or Toronto and turning that into latitude and longitude, or latitude, longitude, turning that into a place name, and that's the reverse search. Then I'm also going to show how I can take this data and then go and get a static map. So extracting the latitude and longitude, showing a map on the page, and then I'll talk a little bit more about LocationIQ, the API. They've got a really good documentation section here, so I will leave the link to the documentation page. You can go through and look at forward geocoding, reverse geocoding. They have an autocomplete, so if you're looking for place names, you can be submitting little bits and pieces of what the person's typing and get possible matches for what they're typing. The maps portion of the API, this is meant to be used not on its own. So if you're used to using Google Maps, then you know that there's the Google Maps JavaScript API that you can put in a web page, or there's API for Android and iOS as well. But that API does the work of building the map, loading the tiles, and doing all that. LocationIQ, this is providing the tiles to some other library, and it works with a bunch of other libraries. OpenLayers, Leaflet, Mapbox. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to leave the link for OpenLayers. I'm not going to build a dynamic map because that involves another API as well. OpenLayers as an example. This is the API that you would use to display your map. So this API displays the map tiles, the vector data, markers, all those things. And here is an example, and I will leave a link to this down in the description as well. It shows a little demo of how you can do this. So really, you load the map box, the OpenLayers script. So that is what's controlling the map on your page. You call their function, and then you can load in the coordinates. And it is using, you can see here, this is the LocationIQ API being called by OpenLayers to display this map. So OpenLayers is providing the tiles to be displayed here. Okay, so we have that. I will leave those links for you guys. I'll leave the link to the documentation. We're going to talk, as I said, about forward geocoding, reverse geocoding, and static maps. So how to render a static image. All right, let's jump over here to the location page that we're building. This HTML and the CSS are already there. The HTML is pretty simple. I've got an input, 3 buttons, and then I've got 2 sections. One where I'm going to display the results, whatever comes back from the API. One where I'm going to display the static map image. Now, if you have not worked with Ajax or Fetch before to do API calls, there's a link there for you to watch that playlist or watch, I think I've got a Fetch in 5 minutes video. So it's a quick little demonstration of how Fetch works. All right, let's jump into the code here. Now, I'm going to be writing a bunch of the code to make this actually work, but this is the structure of my code. So I created an object called app. Inside that, I've got a bunch of values here. The token. This is the token that I created specifically for this video. It'll be gone after the video or before the video is posted, so you will have to register with LocationIQ.com to get your own token, but you can get one for free. They have pretty good pricing. For the free trial, you can try everything. You can make up to 1 request per second, but to a maximum of 5,000 requests a day. Or they're saying 2 requests per second, 60 per minute, 5,000 per day. So if you were doing it once per second for the whole day, that'd be like 86,000 and change requests, but you're limited to 5,000. But that's still pretty good. Anything you're doing as a developer to learn an API or play around with, this is going to have you covered. Then, depending on your needs and which ones of the APIs you want to use, they've got a whole bunch of different plans that you can sign up for a wide range of budgets. All right, jumping back to our page. So the init function is going to be called DOM content loaded event. So when the page loads, we're going to basically just add click listeners to those 3 buttons. When the click listeners are triggered, so when the person actually clicks on any of them, I have a function for do search. This is my forward geocoding search. This function is going to be called. Do reverse is going to be called if I click the one to do the reverse geocoding. Get map gets called when I click on this one. So do search, do reverse, and get map. And then I've got show map to display the image, and show search results, which is going to be called by either of these things, the forward or reverse geocoding, just to display the data. All right, let's start off with the search. So clicking the search button here, which is the forward geocoding. Somebody's typed in a keyword, they've clicked this button. What I'm going to do to start here is I've just got a little bit of basic validation. I'm calling prevent default to stop the button trying to submit a form or take us anywhere if this were an anchor tag. I'm doing building the query string. The Q is the keyword, the query that's being sent to the API. So I take keyword, which is the input box right here. The input from my HTML keyword, I'm getting its value, and then we're going to trim it. So removing any extra space at the beginning or at the end to give us our key value. And we're saying, as long as there is something in Q, as long as it's not an empty string, we're going to keep going. But if it is an empty string, I'm going to return false. So I'm going to exit from the function. I'm not going to try to make an API call if there's nothing in the form. Our URL that we're going to be passing, the forward geocoding search URL. The forward and reverse both start with either US1 or EU1. So if you're in Europe or you're in North America, depending on which one is closer to you, you use a different server to make the call. And then they're both version 1, search and reverse. So different endpoint depending on which one of these you're calling. Format, the default is actually XML, but we're going to say we want JSON coming back, ampersand, and then we're going to add the key to the end of this. So right here, we're going to say search URL, and there's the key. My app.token is this thing right here. That's being placed in there. And then I'm going to pass in my query string. So Q equals this value that the person has typed in. All right, we need to make the actual call. So that's just a basic fetch call. Pass in the URL. When we get the result back, we've got a response object, and we're going to check inside of here to say, you know what, if resp.ok is not good, we're going to throw an error. And I'm going to get my status text from the response. So whatever came back from the server, I'm going to take that text, file not found, server-side error, whatever it was, that text is going to be passed, and I'm going to have a then and a catch. You should always have a catch condition, and it will take that error, and then we're going to display it. I'm just going to use console.error and write out whatever that error message is. Okay, now, if we get past this line, it means response.ok is true. So we did get a result back from the server. When that happens, I want to save that data. So if the person clicks on the map button multiple times, or every time I do a search, I'm going to be updating that data. I want to be able to use that data, whether it's a forward or reverse geocoding search. I want to save it. So later on, when I click the map button, I can access it. And that's why I created this property up here called data. Right here, I'm going to save it inside of that. So we can say that we want to take the JSON data and put it in there. Now, we haven't converted it yet into JSON. It's still, it is JSON. We haven't converted it into an object. So I could save the JSON string here, but I don't want to do that. I want to save the actual object. So we will return this. So this method, JSON, is going to build the JavaScript object from the JSON string. It's going to get passed down to here like this. It's going to be the value that gets passed into here from the return. Now, that is what I'm going to save inside of app.data. There we are. Now we have it saved. We can use it in the future. And we're going to now call this show search results. I want to actually write out the data. So let's pass it down there. We'll call the function app show search results. Now we could pass data down to here, but we've already saved it inside the app.data property. So we'll just access it from there down inside of here. All right, so that's saved. We can now make fetch calls, but we're not doing anything on the page. If I typed nothing and I click search, it's just going to be exiting from there. We inspect, go to our console. So nothing's actually happening here. If we go into our network, we can see, actually, let me shrink this down slightly so we can see the requests. I'm clicking search, nothing's happening. We're exiting from that function right away. But if I type something, there, we can see the call was actually made. And there it is, us.1 locationiq.com v1 search.php. The key's in there, and then q equals Hollywood. So we're making the call. That is being saved inside of app.data. Now we're going to actually put that on the page. So I already had in here that I was going to write out the value. If I jump over into my console, I should be able to see that. And there it is. I actually got an array of 10 things that came back. So app.data, in this case, is an array with 10 possible matches for the word Hollywood. And if you look inside, okay, there's one Hollywood with latitude and longitude. Display name, Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. Let's look at number 7, see what that one is. Hollywood, Pittsylvania County, Virginia. So there are multiple Hollywoods. Now what I'm going to do, just for simplicity's sake, is I'm going to take the very first of these results. So result number 0 from this array. Now inside of here, I'm going to find the section where I'm going to write the results. I'm going to find the pre-tag that is inside of there. Now, I don't have one by default when the page loads. So I'm saying, okay, if there is no pre-tag, we're going to create it and put it in there. So after the first run, it will be in the page. Now, we want to dump our data inside there, but just the first one. All right, so we're going to say that pre.textContent equals, and I'm going to use the json.stringify method. This method lets us pass in the value we want. So I want app.data number 0. And then if I do this, what I'm actually doing is I'm going to format it with 2 space tabs. So we come in here, let's do a Vancouver this time. There we are. So it formatted fairly nicely with 2 spaces right here for all the data. Now, I have inside of my pre-tag, I've got the CSS set to cut this off because I'm going to display the map image here. But that's just my CSS. You can see as I move this around, I'm seeing more and more of the data. Display name, Vancouver, lat long. So these 3 values, these are the values I'm going to use for my map. I'm going to extract that. Remember that this is saved inside of the location, app.data object. Now, to simplify this, what I'm actually going to do is inside of app.data, I'm going to take the first result. So that way, what goes in there is just one single object. And now I can refer to app.data all by itself. Now, I did it the first way so that we could see that it was an array, but now, when I do the search for this, it's just the one object. So I'm just grabbing this one object, writing it here, and saving it into app.data. Okay, so that's it. That's the first one. We're doing a search. We're typing in a keyword, doing a search, and getting back the results from LocationIQ API. The reverse, going to do the same thing effectively, but instead of typing a word, we're going to type in some latitude and longitude. And we have to be sure, okay, what are we typing first, latitude or longitude? Because we're going to take, again, whatever the value in keyword was, the input, trim it down. We'll exit if there was nothing. So if it's empty, we're going to search for a comma. Make sure they've put a comma inside of there. And then we're going to take whatever this was, split it on the comma, and we should have two parts. This is going to be an array. Part number 0, we're going to say is our latitude. Part number 1 is going to be our longitude. And I'm going to check to make sure that the length is 2 and that both of these things are actually numbers. So those are my next 3 checks. I'm going to exit if not number for lat or long, and not 2 values. Those are my conditions that I'm testing for. All right. And our reverse search, we've got the reverse URL. I'll come up here. I'll collapse these down so we can see a little bit more. There we go. So app.reverseURL is this one, reverse.php. And we're going to add our key, which is our token. We're going to add the latitude, which is our parts array that we just built right here. Part number 0, part number 1. So we're putting those two things together as the query string. We're going to pass that along to our fetch call, which is really going to be almost the same as what we did right here. We've got the same variable, URL. So we are duplicating some code here. We could refactor this and put it into its own function. We're going to save the URL. I'm going to check to make sure we got a response. If we did, then I'm going to extract the object from the JSON string. And inside of here, so data.0, I'm not going to put it 0. I want to see what it is before I decide to extract something and assume that it's an array. So let's do this. Console.log data. We'll find out what we actually get back from a latitude and longitude that we pass in here. Okay, so let's pass in, and I think that's roughly Vancouver. So I'm going to do a reverse search, passing this latitude and longitude in. And here is the results that came back right here. So we got an object. Refresh that, do it again. 49.2 and negative 123.1. Do a reverse search. I'm getting from two different lines here. 69 and 39. Let's take a look. So 69, that was the line that I just wrote. And line 39 is inside the search results. So it's the one that we set. So this one, when we do the fetch, and then we pass it over to the search results. So here, it's not an array. We don't have to search through it. We have given the latitude and longitude, and it's giving us that data back. So, since this is just an object, I don't have to put this to target this because the results are not an array. But I can use the same function to display. And we can see that it is working. The function that we already wrote is working, so we are writing out the results. Now we're down to the last one, show the map results. So how do I call the API and get a static map back? It's very similar to what we've already done, except we're calling a different URL and passing in different parameters. So up at the top here, we can see the map URL uses maps.locationiq.com, and it's a version 3, not version 1. So different subdomain, different parameters, and then static map. We don't have to specify that the format is going to be JSON because we're getting an image back, right? So let's call our getMap function. Again, prevent default because we're clicking on a button. We want to make sure that there is data. I don't want to call this function if there's nothing saved inside of app.data. So if this is the first button they click on the page, I don't want anything to happen. My latitude and longitude values, those are going to be saved inside app.data. So we need to extract them. So how is it inside of here? How does it look? We've got right at the very root, there's latitude and lon. So lat and lon. app.data.lat, app.data.lon, because they're right at the root of this object. So instead of an empty string, it will be app.data.lon. And instead of the string here, app.data.lat. And those are the two values. So we need to pass those to our map URL. We do need the token. We've got to pass our API key for every single call. And there's a whole bunch of parameters. These are the ones that you should use as a minimum. The center, this is the latitude and longitude value with a comma between them. We need to say what zoom level, a number between 0 and 18, the size of the image that we want to generate. So let's just say 400 pixels by 400 pixels, and the format, PNG or JPEG. So our first thing has got to be center. Where do we want to center the map? So this is going to be my latitude and my longitude. And I'm assuming at this point it's latitude then longitude. I should double check that before we actually do this. So static maps, center takes comma separated value, latitude, longitude. Yeah, so it looks like latitude does come first. That's good. So we've got latitude and longitude with a comma in between them. That is our center. Zoom size format, the other parameters. We'll say zoom equals, let's say 11. And size is going to be width by height. 400 is my width, 400 is my height. I could make it longer. We could say 400 by 600, just to show that that does work. And then format, I'm going to use PNG, because why not? All right, now we're going to have that URL that we can use. We're going to call our showMap function, and we will pass the URL that we just built down to this function. We find the right-hand section. We find the image inside there. If the image doesn't exist, if this is the first time we've called it, we will create an image and append it to the section. My alt text, well, remember we had the display name property right at the root level, same as lat and long. So we're going to use that. app.data.displayName. That's our property. Now we've got data that's inside of here. If you wanted to embed something else, like I'm going to take the place ID. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to put it inside of the image tag. So if I clicked on the image later, I would have a reference to something. This isn't required for this to work. It's just something I like to do when I'm building. I like to embed reference IDs in my HTML so that later on they're there for me to use. All right, we're going to say the image set attribute, and we're going to make one up called data place ID, and its value is going to be app.data.placeID. this thing right here, place ID. This is going to be saved inside my image tag. And then we're going to set our source to be the URL that we passed in. There. That should do it. So we'll pass in the numbers again for Vancouver, -123. And I will do a reverse geocoding search. There's the results. Show the map. And there we have it. 400 by 600 PNG. And it has the zoom level that we requested. I think it's the Canada-US border right there. Richmond, that's within the area of Vancouver. If we change this to zoom out even further, like we set zoom to 11, let's go to 9, see what we get for that. Same latitude and longitude. Reverse search, show the map. And there we go. Yeah, so this is Vancouver. And that's it. That's how you use the LocationIQ API. So I will leave links to all those different things that I showed down in the description. There'll be a link down there as well to the code from this. If you have any questions about how this all worked, please feel free to leave those comments in the questions in the comments. I answer as many as I have time for. And as always, thanks for watching.